Boom to Bust, Canadian Geography Module 12 by Khairun Hussein. Well, to begin this presentation, I thought I'd briefly define the boom to bust cycle. And what this is just an economic expansion and then contraction that all occurs suddenly throughout the development of a town, usually resulted by some sort of industry that has suddenly appeared and then somewhat during this process, many resources, jobs, and economical opportunities are also present. However, the cycle would shortly end with a contraction, and the town would be depopulated. But even worse, most of these economical opportunities would vanish. So, for this activity, I've chosen to base my research off the town of Faro, which is located in the province of Yukon. Faro was once a thriving town in the 1970s. It had the resources that they had built just because of the mining industry, such as recreation centers, curling rink, a new school, department store, fancy hotels, movie theaters, and more. The reason for the town's large success was mainly due to the large lead and zinc mine. During this period, there were many families living there and children as well. The town is very vibrant and a relatively happy place to be. The Faro mine had opened in 1969, and the Cypress Anvil Mining Corporation became the largest private sector employer in the Yukon. At one point, the mine represented a third of the Yukon's entire economy, and by the 1970s, it was the largest lead and zinc mine in Canada. All was well, however, that was until the Faro mine was officially shut down in 1998. Once the mine was gone, the families had all decided that there really was no point in living in the area anymore, and soon most went packing and left, never turning back. The way that people mine has also changed throughout the years. Before, whole families would move together, and now workers usually go individually for short periods of time and then go back to their homes. The population of Faro has also drastically shrunken, from being just 2,000 to now only around 400 people. There is also a surplus in housing that is available. There is around 170 units that were abandoned as reported by the town, which there's also an estimated $3 million in outstanding taxes that have developed throughout the years. Now, the government, decades later, is planning to assume the ownership of these properties and then demolish the abandoned houses or sell them, as they pose a harmful risk to the local inhabitants. The council is also planning on bringing back the mines in a plan that is due to set out in phases and be accomplished hopefully by 2024. Now, the town must decide where to put all of its landfill from these abandoned houses, which would produce the harmful toxins and greenhouse gases, ultimately hurting the environment. The Faro Mines has since been shut down, but what are the environmental impacts that it had ultimately caused? Well, lead mining is really harmful to the environment as it produces pollution from these heavy metals, which would ultimately affect the soils and vegetations such as vegetables and crops. Generating mine tailings is another problem as it contaminates the water sources and also poses a risk for humans as well. Because this leads to many release from chemicals, and there are many diseases that are linked towards this as well. Aboriginal and First Nations individuals were also concerned when such a scenario would ultimately play out because of the influx of migrants that would come and the difficulty to preserve the traditional practices and ways during these periods. Now, how exactly would you prevent a boom to bust scenario? Well, there are a couple of ways. First one that I thought would be helpful would be to not spend all of the resources or invest too much in the building of certain projects towards this mining industry, such as in the Faro, where large schools were built and supermarkets and other recreational centers as well. In the case of a boom to bust cycle, when the process would ultimately bust, it is very